If you ever feel like life's happening too fast and you've got no time to cry, you're in the right place. Hello, and welcome back to an episode of No Time to Cry. I hope you're all having a fabulous week. How am I feeling this week? Bit better. I feel like I'm getting into the flow of things. I'm back in the gym, properly, like hardcore, fully back. And do you know what? I've really enjoyed getting back into it. I think I've always been super open about how important physical exercise is for me personally in terms of like my mental well-being, what it does for me, that quiet place. So yeah, I'm feeling good. There's lots of wedding planning stuff going on. Lots of little intricate little things that need to be done. And Jamie and I have been trying to put in like an hour or so, like every week, just trying to get it done and not overwhelming. I mean, Jamie said to me this week, do you know what? I feel like we're doing really well. You'd done like a big base of it because last year we sort of split roles in terms of he was sorting out the mortgage for this house and then I was sorting out all the venue stuff. So we went and picked the venue together, but obviously working out payment schedules, working out other providers, like finding the photographer, all those sort of key things. I did a lot of the work for that. And then he did all the work in terms of, well, he found the house. He did all the paperwork. He got all the mortgage stuff together, all that sort of stuff. So we were like, right, where are our powerful strengths? And his was more on the house stuff and mine was clearly more on the wedding planning stuff. So yeah, we're all good. Not got much to moan about this week, so that should be a positive episode for everybody in terms of not having to listen to me moan. And I've got a topic this week. So I know a lot of you are aware, I've mentioned it on other episodes, that I'm going through a bit of a redundancy process at work. So I've got to make decisions about if I want to stay longer or if I'm going to go, but there's lots of conversations going on, obviously speaking to a lot of my colleagues, and it brought something to light for me in terms of you never really know what impact you're having on people. And I'll go into that in a little bit more detail, but you never really know what's going on in someone's head. I suppose it's like, what's the weather in there? Are they happy? Are they sad? They might outwardly be projecting a certain way, but also the impact that you have as a person on those people around you. And like I said, let me get into a bit more what I mean by that. So obviously the context is I am likely to either be leaving my company in the next month or so, or I will be staying a little bit longer, but I won't be working in the same department that I work at the moment. So I'm having conversations with people about, obviously needing to do handovers and potentially if I leave or I stay, what will that look like? And I suppose I was just sort of overwhelmed by the feedback from people on kind of me leaving and the impact that is having on them, but also not in like a negative point of view, but just their opinion on me and the impact that I've had on not just them personally, but their career. And I suppose I probably didn't realize that I'd had such an impact. And I'm not talking about one person, I'm talking about several people that have spoke to me in the last couple of weeks, and one person in particular got quite emotional at the idea of me leaving the business, and the feedback was just about the sort of energy and vibe that I bring and that it's infectious. And I suppose I'm just being me, so I don't think about it in terms of me turning up and having a certain perspective or a certain style. I just turn up and authentically be myself. And I suppose you don't often ask people for feedback on your approach or how you handle things. So now that I'm getting all of this feedback, and some of it is quite emotional, and oh gosh, I had someone say something to me today about, I wish that we could replicate you. We need more versions of you. And I had a lovely conversation with a graduate who I worked with earlier on in the year, and they've just gone for their first role externally, and they got some incredible feedback in their interview. And, she was saying to me, the feedback that I got, I account to you, and how it actually made me quite emotional speaking to so many people, obviously, during this process. And I don't really think about I suppose you don't really think about the impact that you have on people day to day when you're just turning up to work or having a conversation with someone, in the street even. I think it made me start thinking a little bit more around just day-to-day interactions and actually how weighty they can be and what impact they can have on people, because you don't really know what's going on. And I think because I do have quite a positive outlook, but also I do a lot in the space of mental health. I have really open conversations at work about mental health and therapy. I'm the chair for our disability, neurodiversity, mental health and long-term health conditions network. And I think that's it. And allowed people to start having bigger conversations about their well-being, whether that be physically or mentally. And yeah, I just don't think I'd really thought about what that actually looked like. I think I had different drivers rather than the impact that I was having on somebody. And I found it all very overwhelming, if I'm being completely honest. Like, I suppose I just didn't really view myself as someone that, the potential of them leaving a company or moving department even would bring someone to tears, which is odd because actually when I've left a previous company, a manager got quite upset. But I suppose you think that's more of like a one-off situation. And I suppose from myself, it's made me think about what can I be doing as can I be actively, I suppose, thinking about the impact that I might be having on people and how I can harness that even more so, from strangers and different places that I go. Is it a smile to someone that looks like they're having a bad day? Is it talking to somebody elderly in the queue who might, you don't know their situation, they might have tons of family or they might have none at all. I suppose I'm just think it made me more thoughtful about those teeny interactions that to you are nothing, but to someone else could mean a lot. I've spent quite a lot of time in London recently for work, going back and forth. And obviously you're traveling on public transport and things like that. And you see thousands of different people. And I'll be very honest, I'm someone, Jamie laughs at this all the time because he's very security conscious. And I am, I suppose that I am street wary. Obviously I grew up in London, you kind of have to be. But I don't really look for the bad. I'm someone who's kind of always looking up, like looking at buildings, looking at what's going on around them, where I suppose Jamie's more like, who's that person? Who's that person? Is there a risk somewhere? Is there not? And I don't think I've really looked at people and spent time kind of observing and being like, oh, I wonder if they're having a bad day or I wonder if they're having a good day. I think I'm quite level-headed. So I'm not someone who gets road rage or, even if someone's in my way, I'm like in the car or I'm like, babe, come on, Jesus. Like I don't get angry. I might get frustrated, but I'm not someone who gets angry very easily. But obviously sometimes you see the other end of that, right? And you're on the receiving end of somebody who's maybe very aggravated or very angry. And I just wondered, do we ever take that kind of split second to go, I wonder what's going on for them? Maybe they've had like the worst day ever. And you being a little bit more patient, or you just saying, honestly, it's fine, don't worry about it. Like it's not a big deal, especially if it isn't a big deal. How does that kind of sit with them? And I'm someone who always kind of falls to comedy and like having a laugh. And I've been recently going to, you guys must think I'm mental, by the way, when I talk about all the stuff I go to and what I get up to, but the joys of being 29 and having a stepson that's like nearly an adult, right? So I get to do all these kind of different activities, albeit on strict timelines now with Paddington. So Nick, obviously I spoke about Nicola on the podcast before, we started going to a Latin line dance class. Essentially, it's like Latin dances, but you're dancing on your own. You're not dancing with a partner. And I used to do like ballroom and Latin years ago, only as a beginner. Like just before COVID, I did it for a couple of years, and I loved it. And Nick and I have been going to this class. We've been like 3 times, and obviously the average age of the people in that class is significantly higher than me and Nick. But one of my favorite things is just going and like having a chat with them, making them laugh. I was saying to Paula the other day, the older generation is so much easier to make laugh. Like the comedian in me comes out when I'm in that environment, and I get so much joy out of it in terms of like, obviously, I suppose sometimes people have a certain opinion about like the younger generation and how they may be. And I think Nick and I are very sort of like the opposite of that stereotype in terms of like, you know, we're happy to have a chat and have a laugh. And, you know, for them, they're doing it for exercise, and as are we, and, you know, not taking it too seriously, and just like, we're not the best in there. Do you know what I mean? Like, we can make a joke out of the fact that they're all bloody smashing it. They've been doing these dances for years, and Nick and I are at the back like, what the hell is going on? We don't know what's going on. And there was one lady who we were speaking to like this week, and she was talking about how she's been going for years, but then she was really poorly, and like she missed like the interaction of meeting up with everyone and like that community feel. So yeah, I suppose again, it's like another week where I've probably been like quite deep in thought in terms of other people and what we can do as individuals in terms of like that responsibility, like to make, I suppose, to take some responsibility of saying like, how do we still let people know that there's so much like good in the world, and like you can be even the tiniest things, like smiling at somebody in the supermarket, or having a conversation with someone, or asking if someone's okay, or making a bit of a joke and making someone laugh. Like it can be so much bigger than that. It can be so much bigger than what you think it is. And it might be having a conversation with, you know, a homeless person, or someone that's sat outside of a supermarket or something like that. There is a gentleman who is homeless, and he's kind of always around our local area in our supermarket. And every time I see him, I try to not just give him money, but have a conversation. I've not actually seen him in months and months and months, actually. I joke because that'll start playing on my mind as well. But I suppose it's just having a bit more thought in terms of the impact that you have, and also the other end of that, of like, if you've had a bad day and then you take that out on a complete stranger, or you're snappy with a waitress or a waiter, or all those kind of things. I just think, you know, you don't know everybody's situation. You don't know what's going on. They could have just lost a family member, and it's their first day back in work, and you've literally shouted at them because you've had a bad day, and that means that you've been irritated, and now a small thing feels like a big thing. I suppose it's just being mindful of all of that, and trying to think about like what positives we can bring as individuals, but also being mindful of like your actions and what you say could also have like an impact on somebody else's day. And I think one of the things that I put on my vision board for this year, if you guys have a look at it, was around being a nicer, better person. And that doesn't mean that I'm not a nice or good person. I would like to think that I am. I'm a caring person, but I always think you should strive to be the best, like nicest version of who you can be. And that shouldn't come at the cost of like your boundaries and all those sorts of things. So I'm not talking about, you know, not communicating how you're feeling just so that you come across as nice. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about being proactive in trying to think about the little interactions that you have with anybody, whether that be a friend, a colleague. The words that you use, words are so powerful, and the language that you use can have such an impact on someone, your kids, your friends, complete strangers, especially if people are posting on the internet. Like I'm always quite mindful of the language that I use because I have such an open platform with the podcast, and absolutely anybody can come across my podcast, as I found out. And that means that I'm not always going to get my wording correct, like at all. I'm not always going to get my approach correct. Sometimes I am going to come on here and you're going to be like, God, what a moany bitch. But in general, I try to open up conversations and have a think about the impact of these topics and what they can mean for others. Because if I can talk about it, then somebody else can talk about it. If I can come on and kind of navigate like difficult situations and admit that they're difficult, but still find light and still find the positives in life and relationships, then hopefully that makes people feel like they can do the same. So those small interactions, like, you don't know, this could be the day that someone's considering taking their life, for instance. Obviously, you know my experience with that with my dad, and a small interaction, a conversation, are you all right? Looking someone in the eye and really saying to them, is everything okay? Could be that like glitch in the matrix that makes them kind of say like, oh, I'm going to hold out. Like, there's a reason for me to be here today. Someone cares about me. And I'm the first person to say, like, you're not responsible for somebody else's actions. You know, if someone does decide to go ahead and do that is their own choice. But if we can create a space and a community and just a world where we care about other people, we appreciate what's going on in different countries, different lives, especially with all the crazy, crazy, horrible stuff going on in the world. I just think that we should all try and commit to trying to make either the world or individual or a group of people's world a better place. And that doesn't have to be anything huge. It could just be those small, what you see as mundane conversations that could really have an impact and open up somebody else's idea of feeling like they're cared for, feeling like somebody is interested in them, feeling less lonely. You know, people talk about all the time like a loneliness epidemic, specifically in men, but in general, a lot of people feel lonely. I just think that these sort of little things are how we open that up. And I've had some really interesting conversations about that this week, like with a men's mental health group in work, and kind of how we open up different conversations in different ways that engage people differently in terms of feeling less pressure or feeling more trust to be able to do that. And I genuinely believe that comes from the art of communication and not pressurizing people, but just creating safe places. And I think when you go back to Paula's episode and she speaks about that village, like, I suppose for me, I didn't realize that in work, for instance, just for being me and being positive and standing up for certain things and being a voice that's quite powerful, but not in a way, what was the metaphor somebody used? You're never the person that walks into the battlefield with a machine gun and shoots everybody down. You're picking people up through the trenches and saying, come on, we can do it together. I don't agree with that, but let's get it, let's do this together. Here's an alternative route. Let's do something differently. And I suppose just by doing that and having that approach, I've created I've become a villager for somebody else in terms of making their job easier, making their job more enjoyable when they like working with me. And I suppose that it's trying to be more present and aware of that impact. Whereas I did that subconsciously. Can you consciously do that? Can you consciously turn up to work, deliver what you need to deliver, but do it in such a way that you're bringing people on that journey with you? And rather than people seeing you, rather than you being a leader that is someone where you go, oh God, they rule with an iron fist. You see someone and you go, wow, they're really confident, they get shit done, but they do it in such a way that there's no no person left behind. There's no one injured along the way. You're picking up the pieces as you go and doing it as a collective effort, as a village, as a team. I just think life is a team sport, work is a team sport. As much as I'm individually driven, I think that you can't do it without a good group of people behind you, and that you should also celebrate that and give people kudos in life, but also in work, of when they're doing a good job. So yeah, that's kind of where my mindset is. And it came from work, but it also came from a poem that I came across on TikTok. And I'm going to try and read this to you because it is one of the most beautiful poems that I have ever come across. And I will give credit to the individual who wrote that. Bear with me. And that is Hayley Grace. It's a TikTok video. So I'm going to try, gratefully, she's put subtitles on. So I'm going to try and read through it. And I won't do it as good a job as she has, but I just think it's really important of you all to read it. And rather than me just kind of putting up a screenshot and talking about it, I would love to share this poem by Hayley to you. And then you can have a think, and we can have a think about, like, as a group, kind of how that's made us feel. And write in the comments, follow. I'm sure most of you are following us on some sort of social media, but if you're not, reach out, talk to me about it. I'm going to upload this clip so that we can have a bit of a chat maybe in the comments as well. But it starts with, you hold the door for the man behind you because it's polite. He breathes like someone who's been holding his breaking point in for hours. You say, after you. And he lingers in the doorway long enough to tell you he's tired. You tell a dumb joke about the weather, and he laughs and moves his hand away from the note he had folded between his fingers. A note that would have been the last one he'd ever write. Gives me goosebumps. You smile before you went separate ways. Have a nice day, you say to the man. And you say it with integrity, like you actually hope his day is nice. Tonight he misses the bus, calls his brother, and tomorrow he wakes up. Still here, still breathing, still alive. You drop a few extra dollars on the table after a meal. Casual, like change is nothing. The waitress takes a photo of the receipt, texts it to her mother, and for the first time in weeks, she's certain she can afford rent this month. She goes home to her children, who don't have to worry about having a roof for another month. You tell a woman in the restroom her hair is beautiful, because it is, and she stumbles at the word. It's been months since anyone's called her that. The voice that used to say that is gone, and she hasn't been able to look in the mirror since. She goes home and looks in the mirror twice. And for the first time in a long while, she lets herself be a beautiful girl with beautiful hair. You sit next to an elderly man on the bus because all of the other seats are taken. And the city has a way of pushing people together. He nods at your headphones and asks what you're listening to. And when you tell him a song, he hums the melody and you both laugh. And he says it's his wife's favourite. Your mother told you that you were always an old soul. You ask where he's going and he says he's visiting the pharmacy for prescriptions. When he stands to leave and you tell him take care, he folds your words into his pocket like a tissue. And that night, after the kettle calls, he walks over to the radio and turns up the song you played him earlier. He smiles at the wedding picture of him and his wife. Married for 52 years, now widowed for one. And in that moment, the house is no longer empty. And the man has his wife again. You never know the paths that led someone to stand where they are. Some climb steep, rocky inclines. Some walk smooth roads. And others are still crawling. You can do small things every day to make people feel seen. And it might not save everyone, but it might save the ones who need it most. So be gentle, offer grace, as you might one day need it for the road that you don't know yet you may have to walk. So hopefully that's worked, because I've read it bit by bit, but the words hit me so deep, because obviously I've been thinking about this anyway, and it's been playing on my mind. And then I came across that poem and I was like, oh, this is the topic for this week. Because it kind of, again, I believe in you're supposed to, there's certain things you come across and there's certain people that you come across. And if it moves you emotionally, honestly, it makes me really emotional, that poem, hence why I read it out. But if it moves something in you, then do something with that, bring it to other people. You might not have ever come across that poem before. Obviously, it's just from a creator on TikTok. And I say not just, but you know what I mean. It's an original poem and it's gorgeous and it's had hundreds of thousands of views, if not more. But I feel like I was supposed to come across that this week whilst I've been having these kind of interactions with people. And it felt important for me to talk about it. So I'm trying to do things that and talk about things that kind of stir me emotionally, because that brings the most authentic version of me to this podcast as well. That's why I always say to you guys, I never really have a plan about weeks and weeks in advance what I'm going to talk about, because there's certain topics I want to cover. There's certain things I specifically want to speak to. There's certain topics that people ask me, can you talk about? But actually, I seem to just come across things that sort of hit me deep inside. And I think I need to speak about that. And I want to talk about that. And then I come here and I get to speak about them and I get to talk about them. And I just think, do you know what? Even, like I say, some of my episodes get hundreds and hundreds of views. Some of my episodes get like 50 views, 60 views. I just think you never know when someone's going to come across a message that they desperately needed to hear. And if I can play a single teeny tiny part in talking about stuff that people really need to hear about, then that's like what I'm here to do. And if we have some laughs along the way, great. If we have some tears along the way, then so be it, right? We're meant to be making time for crying. But yeah, it was like an emotional listen, and she does a great, I will put it on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. She does a much better version of obviously reading it in the fluid way that it's supposed to be read, because it's her poem. But yeah, I just thought, do you know what? I could have just spoke about the poem and put it up there for you guys to go and listen to yourself. But there's certain words that and things that you come across that you think, wow, people need to hear this. People need to kind of, it was impactful to me. So hopefully it has that same impact on you. But yeah, that's the TikTok of the week. And I just, I suppose it's thinking about like, I don't know, I sort of see these like tiny acts of kindness as a bit like a fucking middle finger up to like a world that just seems to be getting like colder and colder in its approach and the conversations and how we talk about human beings and other people. And there seems to be like just a lot of negativity in the world at the moment, and a lack of care for people in general. And that I also think is the media, because I don't actually think that that's realistic. When you meet everyday people and you have conversations, the vast majority of people do care and they want things to get better for people. But the media spins like a really negative view, and that everybody doesn't give a crap. And I find it quite difficult at times to kind of separate what is being spoke about like in the news and things like that versus like these interactions that I have as a human being. And I try to think about the interactions that I have rather than what's being spoken about. And I think the more people you speak to, it can either do one of two things. It can drive confidence in what you're saying and what you're feeling, and there is still humanity in the world. Or you know, you come across a group of people and you think, wow, we do not see the same page, or we don't think in the same way at all. And at that point, I would kind of suggest have a look at your surroundings, have a look at the people you're surrounding yourself with. If there's people that you're spending quite a lot of time with that make you feel the opposite about humanity and there being good people in the world and that people care about people. I suppose just trying to make, like, life is so short, right? If you can make your life enjoyable, but also play a part in helping others, then why would you not do that? I don't know, maybe that's just my mindset, but I just think, like I say, it's like trying to use that spin of like having some sort of kindness and talking about kindness and thinking about what we can do. Like I say, the smile at the bloody supermarket or having a conversation with someone. And I think as women, you do have to be careful. I am going to throw that out there. Like I had a very awkward, not very nice experience when I was in London last week with a gentleman who was trying to like intimidate me at the tube, like at a tube stop in Euston, and was heavily intoxicated. I just ignored him. But I appreciate that kind of having conversations for certain individuals, vulnerable people, women, it can be difficult. So make sure you're doing it in a safe environment, but also have a think about that in itself, right? Like, is there conversations and things that we could be doing that helps women feel more confident, and that not everybody is that man that did that to me in the tube station, but also the other people that were there, what could they have done to have helped me in that situation? So it's like trying to, I suppose, make sure that you're being mindful, make sure you're looking after yourself, but not letting that stop you. And I suppose having a negative view of everybody, because not everybody is that person. Not everybody is going to make you feel uncomfortable or is going to have views that you don't agree with. So trying to find spaces where you feel safe to have like these conversations, but also to have a positive impact on people. I just think like that's important. So try and find those safe spaces where you feel like you can have that. And that could be with a colleague, that could be making sure that like when you start a meeting, you're starting a meeting with, how are you? You're right. Even if it means booking extra 5 minutes in so that you can have like a genuine conversation with someone, which is not just, right, what are we delivering? What are we doing now? Have you done this? Have you done that? I think it's really important to try and like make space for human interactions that you would have. Obviously, we live in a very modern era where a lot of things are done on like Teams and stuff like that. So I always try to have that same rapport that I would have had if we'd had like a face-to-face meeting, also on a Teams call, and making space for like checking in and how's everyone doing? How's everyone feeling? Like, are you good at the moment? How much work have you got on? Because if I'm about to load you with a crap ton of more stuff to do, I want to understand where you're at. What are you already working on? What have you already got on your plate? So then I can adjust maybe my expectations as well before I've even asked you to do something. And I'm making sure that I'm trying to do a good job of delivering what I need to, but not at the cost of somebody else's well-being. It's just like a thoughtfulness, I suppose, and a mindfulness. And again, I can't say that I've overly actively thought about that, but it shone a light on it for me in the last couple of weeks with the feedback that I've had, where I'm sort of thinking, okay, well, I can't say it was conscious that I've done that, although I suppose I consciously care about people, but it's something that I'm going to be mindful of, depending whatever the outcome be, whether I leave or whether I stay for a bit longer or I do a different job, that I think about those things and try to carry that on because I know it's had a positive impact. So how do I keep that going? So let's finish up with the thought of the week. So like I say, I always write these out when I'm planning the episodes, and sometimes I forget what I wrote down. I know the gist of it, so bear with me. The thought of the week was kind of reflecting back on what I've said, but also that TikTok. You never know what somebody is going through, and someone can be spiraling into darkness or a dark place, and a simple hello, how are you? Are you all right? How have you been? With integrity and truly asking because you want to know can be that spot of light that they need. And you genuinely don't know. That could save somebody's life. And you might not ever know that that is the impact that it's had. But there's almost something beautiful in that, in terms of doing something with the hope that it has a positive impact on someone, but never needing the validation that it does, because you're just trying to be a good person. And I suppose like I've had a couple of really thoughtful weeks, and that's why the episodes are going in this direction. I think I've just in a place at the moment where I'm thinking quite deeply about stuff and people, and I suppose like career wise, what I want to do and the things that I'm trying to do. And it's making me have a real think about what I feel my purpose is. And I have always, like I say, have always massively been driven by career opportunities and what my next steps are. And I suppose that's how for a long time, because of my background and my upbringing, and I'm from a very working class family, that it's how I've kind of measured myself on how successful I am. So by getting promotions and moving myself up the kind of career ladder very quickly from a very young age and being very successful in work, that's been my measure of success. Whereas I think I'm approaching a time in my life where I see success as something different to that. And yes, I still want to have a good career. I still want to be driven, but I want to do it either in something that helps other people or has an impact on other people, or I want to do a job where I held that moral standard for myself and consciously make sure that I'm making workplaces a better place to be, improving the culture, improving where I'm working, not just by turning up and being a happy person and getting stuff done, but consciously checking in, being that person. And I'm not talking about overdoing it and people be like, wow, okay, she's invasive, asking too many questions, which I can be a little bit at times, but actually just that I really care about people and I want to make an impact. And I feel like my purpose is around how I can improve my life, but also other people's life along the way. So yeah, again, another thoughtful one, guys. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you for joining me for another week. I'm trying to think. Well, we've got some bank holidays coming up and stuff like that. So I'm going to have a think about whether we have a week off and so that we can enjoy the Easter break and things like that. Or I might still put an episode out, but I will let you know. I'll keep you updated on Insta. Obviously, if you're not already, give us a follow on all the platforms, like, subscribe. If you can comment on the episodes as well, I would really, really appreciate that. And I hope you're all doing really well. I hope it gives you something to think about. Give someone a smile in the supermarket, say hello, make conversation with an elderly person. You don't know what impact that might have. If someone's looking like they're having a bad day, ask them if they're all right. And let me know any of your kind of stories where that kind of you've heard back on the impact of that as well and the positives that can do, because then we can share that and it can give somebody else the confidence to go and do it because it's turned out well and it's had a very positive impact. I love hearing good news stories. So yeah, see you all very soon. Bye.